Nammo Phat. Good morning. Thank you for joining me for our daily practice check-in. Listen, listen, listen. This beautiful sound calls us back to our true home. The first mindfulness training. Aware of the suffering caused by the destruction of life, I vow to cultivate compassion and learn ways to protect the lives of people, animals, plants, and minerals. I'm determined not to kill, not to let others kill, and not to condone any act of killing in the world, in my thinking, or in my way of life. For our Dharma readings, we've been reading a book by the nuns of Amaravati called The Body, Dhamma Reflections on Aging, Sickness, and Death. And we're in the Dhamma talk by Ajahn Candasiri called Meeting Death and Sadness. The third noble truth, which is where the good news begins, is that suffering can cease. It ceases when we relinquish our attachment to these desires. We don't necessarily have to get rid of the desire, but we do need to relinquish the attachment to it. Say you really want some kind of sense pleasure, but then think, actually, I don't have to have that. It's such a relief, isn't it? You suddenly realize that it doesn't matter if you don't get whatever it is that you thought you really wanted. Often, bhavatanha, the desire to exist, expresses itself through wanting to have our own way. We tend to invest in that a lot. When people used to ask me what was the most difficult thing to give up when I became a nun, it was very easy for me to answer immediately. And it wasn't to do with food or sex or anything like that. It was having my own way. You may have noticed that when you live with other people, you often don't get your own way. But you can also notice that sometimes, when you really want something to be a particular way, you might suddenly have the thought, actually, I don't need it to be like that. It's okay. So it's attaching to the desire that is the cause of suffering, and letting go of it is a relief. Another example is when we want to have the last word in an argument. This can be very funny when you notice what's happening, particularly if the discussion is on something you don't really care about all that much. You feel yourself getting more and more wound up, hotter and hotter as the other person gets hotter and hotter, and the whole thing seems to escalate. But if you suddenly realize what's happening, you can choose just to breathe out and let the other person win. That feeling of not having to win is so pleasant. So when we relinquish that desire to be, to exist, to have our way, to win out over somebody, this is where suffering ceases. The fourth truth is the Eightfold Path, which consists of basic guidelines for our lives. It's referred to as the middle way, the way of balance, perfect view, perfect intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right collectedness or concentration. All these are aspects of our lives that we can develop. As we do so, little by little, we experience an increasing sense of ease and lightness as our understanding grows and deepens. May all beings be well. May all beings be happy. May all beings be peaceful. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you for joining me this morning.